it's Colleen Low with the Born to Be Brave podcast and YouTube channel. And I am so excited for today's interview. Wait till you hear about Greg and his journey and the knowledge he's going to share and the wisdom. Oh my gosh. And wait till you find out how we became friends and that we're both best-selling authors, which is just mind-blowing. But I'm going to read you his bio and then I'll introduce you to my friend Greg. Here we go. Greg is a personal development coach who teaches professionals how to implement self-management systems so they can build their passionate side hustle around their day job without feeling overwhelmed and without sacrificing what is most important to them. Greg also coaches on behalf of Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, and he helps guide their students to build online knowledge businesses. Prior to working as a coach, Greg was in charge of building multimedia-based training tools on behalf of a corporate training company for its Fortune 500 clients. Greg also has a background as a science communicator and public speaker and has had the privilege of teaching over 25,000 people from around the world to live interactive, small world in live, interactive, and small and large scale settings. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Colleen. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so honored that you're on the podcast with us today. And for those of people who don't know, we're both in the book, Born to Be Brave, When Love Speaks. And what an honor that is, right? Did you ever think you'd be a best-selling author?
Never. It's funny how going on this journey that where sometimes life can take you and how you have these serendipitous coincidences that happen along the way when you put out an intention in the world and then you take action towards that intention. And for example, how we met and how we both ended up becoming best-selling authors. And, one of those coincidences as well was meeting a mutual mentor, Maya Komaroda, who's just fantastic. And through her tutorship, through her leadership, I was able to share a story that really obviously resonates with me because I've lived it, and I felt like would resonate with a lot of other people out there, which is to go out and to do the thing that fulfills you the most, live life without any regrets, and to live life to the fullest. Because as you mentioned before, like life, tomorrow ain't guaranteed. Make every moment count, right?
Yeah, we don't know, right? It's not your practice life, and some people didn't wake up today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you mind sharing? Because I've heard your story. I've read your story multiple times. I'm in love with your story. I listened to you share it at the global book launch, which was just really powerful. I feel like you're a master storyteller. It was just really amazing. Can you share with our listeners and our audience that are watching us at home today or in their cars or wherever they are, what is the story that really helped change and shape your life and your message? What happened to you?
Yeah, well, long story short, it was right around when I turned 30, and I was on a vacation down south in Mexico with two of my closest friends in the world, Bernard and Costin. And prior to that, I had lived a life where I thought I was happy. I thought I was fulfilled. I thought that I was on the right path in my life. And what ended up happening on this vacation was that my friend and I, Bernard and I, we were in the water, and an undertow started to pick up suddenly without warning. It's scary how quickly, one moment you're having the time of your life, and the next moment everything just turns 180 degrees the opposite direction. And I just remember being pulled out by the undertow and thinking to myself, I better get back to the beach. I better get back to Costa, better get back to safety. And hearing my friend calling for help, Bernie calling for help, just like, Greg, come help me. And I noticed that he had been pulled even farther out to water than I had. And my first immediate thought is, I cannot swim back to the shore. I have to go get my friend. He is beyond a friend. He is my brother. I have to try to save his life. I'm not a trained lifeguard, so I'm just going to throw that out there. And I'm decent. I'm a decent swimmer, but I am no trained lifeguard. And I remember swimming out the Bernie. The waves are crashing into us. It's getting stronger and stronger. I make it out the Bernie. He bear hugs me. And the next wave hits. We both get pulled under. And it happened in just this. I can't even describe to you necessarily the level of desperation you reach when you're realizing you have no control over the situation, where you have your friend on your back, you're struggling between the waves, trying to get air into your lungs, and your legs are getting tired. You can't use your arms because your friend's bear hugging you. You're desperate to save his life and your own. And Mother Nature is just hitting you relentlessly over and over and over. Just remember being pulled underwater, just taking in a bunch of seawater and just spitting it out. Lungs are burning, legs are burning. I'm gasping for air, can barely stay alive between waves. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is it. Like, this is how I'm going to die. I remember that thought running through my head. And I told my friend, you got to get off my back. I can't save you like this. Let's link arms. Let's try to swim back to shore. And we start swimming back together. Next wave hits us, and it's the strongest one yet. It just rips us apart. He gets carried even farther away out from me. And as I surface and I look around, I see him in the distance, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't save him. I can't save him. If I try to go back out and I try to rescue him again, chances are I'm going to get us both killed. And so I know at the same time, I can't leave him. He's my brother. And so I'm in this weird middle space where I'm like, I can't save him. I can't leave him. I just got to pray that someone on the beach can see us. And I just remember turning to the beach. I looked over my shoulder and said, I got to get somebody's help. And I just started waving my arms in the air, just waving them, just like, please God, someone see us. And by some miracle, my friend Costin, who by this point looks like an ant, he is so far away from us, sees us, gets the lifeguard. Lifeguard jumps down from his perch, runs towards us, goes in the water. And I'm like, okay, we're saved. We're saved. We're going to make it. I turn to Bernie, like, lifeguard's on the way, man. Don't worry. Don't just keep your head above the water. Just keep your head above the water. I'm here. I am not leaving you. Except there was a problem, and that it was the lifeguard couldn't reach us. The waves had become too strong by this point, and the lifeguard was struggling to get to us. And in this moment, I'm like, oh boy, this is not looking good. And I just remember keeping my eyes on lifeguard back on Bernie, and I'm just remembering, I'm thinking to myself, like, if this lifeguard can't make it out to us and Bernie's head dips below the water and he does not surface, I have no choice. I have to go after him because I could not live with myself if I didn't. And a second lifeguard has to come out to save the first lifeguard. And then the two of them make it out to me. It takes three of us to swim out to get my friend. And we bring him back to shore. And I'm carrying my friend under one arm. The other lifeguard is carrying Bernie under the other arm. And the lifeguards rest him on the ground, attend to him, and I'm there. And I remember Costin coming up to me and saying, for a moment there, it didn't look good for you guys. And I remember him saying to me, I thought I was going to lose two brothers today. And I'm gasping for air, and I got so much adrenaline running through my system that it didn't even process for me. It didn't even process for me like how close I was to dying that day on the beach. And then I remember in the days and the weeks and months that followed, it started to sink in, where I would be brought back to that moment on the beach. I would remember myself feeling like I'm drowning. I would remember taking in water. I would remember the thought of just like being underwater and like, this is how I'm going to die. I remember, and it just, that thought just pulled me out of the present moment, instantly being pulled out of whatever I was doing. And I would just relive that moment and just be paralyzed, reliving that moment. And that's when it really started to dawn on me just how close I was to it having gone the other way. And I'm pretty sure in some other universe, some other form of this universe, Greg Mang didn't make it out of the water that day. Yeah. And so I think to myself about that often. I had thought about it often for a long period of time, where I was like, if I had been so close to it going the other way, there had to be a reason why I'm still here. Like there has to be a reason I'm still alive today. And I remember also thinking to myself, had I died that day and had I met my maker, would I have been proud if my maker had sat me down and said, Greg, were you proud of your life? Had you accomplished what you wanted with your life? I would have been saying no. I would have had to say no. And when you come to that realization that, you thought you were happy, you thought you were fulfilled, you thought you were on the right path, but when push came to shove and you actually faced the end and you were forced to face the naked truth, and that naked truth is the most painful thing in the world, that you had basically squandered your life. Like there were so many things I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to grow my own business. I wanted to travel to Hawaii. It was always a bucket list vacation for me. I wanted to pursue a passion for creative writing. I like, there were people in my life, I hadn't even told them I loved them because I just took it for granted. I was always going to be here. Something as simple as that. And none of that would have happened if it had gone a different way. And so I told myself, that regret that I was feeling in that moment, that was a gift. That moment that I felt that regret, that was a gift. And the reason why is because if I look at regret and I feel that regret and I ask myself the hard questions today and I do the hard work today, that means I can be proactive. And that means I can change tomorrow. And I came to look at regret as it's not about the past. I can't change the past. I can't change the fact that I didn't pursue any of this stuff. I allowed fears, I allowed doubts to stop me from doing this. I can't change any of that, but I can change the future if I allow myself to feel the regret today, because I do not want to be 80, 90 years actually at the end of my life and have run out of tomorrows, had run out of time to change my life for the better. And that was a philosophy that guided me from that point forward. Whereas like, if I feel fear, but I know I'm being pulled in this direction, I got to do it. Like, otherwise I'm going to feel the regret. And I fear the regret a lot more than I fear any sort of obstacle that's in my way from me achieving my goal. Whether it be starting a business, whether it be transferring into a new industry, whether it be even sharing a story in an international release of a book, right? Mm-hmm. I have to do it because I know by going through that journey that on the other side of it, there's going to be a sense of just fulfillment and joy and self-respect and pride and accomplishment and impact that would not be experienced otherwise. And if I was never able to experience those things, just the amount of regret I would feel, like I just wouldn't want to live with it. I couldn't live with it. And so that really is my story, and really the genesis, if you will, for kind of the second life that I'm leading now. And just, I know it sounds a little bit cliche that, you live today because you don't have tomorrow. But when you actually go through and you experience something like that, where, either you have had a near-death experience or you've known someone who has a near-death experience, so maybe someone close to you, you just have a whole new outlook on life. You truly do. And that phrase, as cliche as it may sound to everybody else, to you, you've lived it. And so it's true. It's absolutely true.
It's a gift, actually, I think, because I think your story is so powerful, and not everyone gets to have their mortality shown to them in the moment like that. And so they're under the illusion that they have time.
Yeah.
So when you're under the illusion that you have time, a lot of decisions are made under the guise of someday I'll do this. And someday never comes. That's one of someone else in the book, that's one of her sayings, someday never comes. And, it's interesting. As you know, my son was very sick, and it made me realize, crap, it's the same thing. I had this aha moment. Like, I live 5 minutes from the beach, 10 minutes from the beach if I miss all the lights. And I don't go out on the ocean. Like, why don't I try paddleboarding? And why don't I go almost every day now, right? But it made me realize, like, I see people out there every day, but I don't even get out of my car and try it. That's crazy. I might as well live in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Because I don't access the ocean, even though I live, I walk on the beach, but I don't go on the beach, like, in the ocean. And when you're under the illusion that you have someday, that you have time, then mostly I feel, for me personally, I would procrastinate all the things that I wish I was going to do. I would say I'd have an excuse, right? You said fear, worry about what other people think, not knowing how to do it, not saying I don't have enough time, whatever it is, all our excuses we tell ourselves.
Mhm.
And what a gift that moment of regret was when you think you're going to die in the ocean, you think you're going under, your life is over, and you're like, well, holy crap, I should have done all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And when you face the end, you kind of realize like all the other fears that I have are products of the mind. They don't actually exist. And compared to the end of your life and facing the end of your life with regret, you realize, you know, as monumental as they may feel in the moment, ultimately they are pretty trivial. And it was a gift, instead of being 90 years old, looking back on my life and having that exact same moment, that moment was essentially fast forwarded 60 years. And I got to experience that moment right in my early 30s. And you're absolutely right. Like you hit the nail right on the head, Colleen. As a young man at the time, I was thinking to myself naively, I had all the time in the world. And I think a lot of young people think that way. I think a lot of young people think, I have lots of time, you hear stories as well. And there was a story that a recurring story that a lot of soldiers tell when they come back from serving, where, they may have been shot or, heaven forbid, something terrible were to have happened to them. And they often say it always happens to the other person. I always thought it happened to the other person. And then it happened to me. And I realized I'm just mortal. And whenever I hear stories like that, I'm like, I identify with them so deeply because that's what I experienced. I'm like, you always hear other stories of other people like suffering something like a near-death experience, but it never happened to you. It doesn't happen to people close to you. So you're so removed from it. And then when it does happen to you, it's like whatever naivete you felt instantly evaporates, and you realize like, you become acutely aware that you're mortal. And I think that that's actually an incredible gift. I think that there is a healthy urgency from realizing we have a set amount of time on this planet to have impact. We have a set amount of time on this planet to live life to the fullest. We have a set amount of time on this planet to love fully and to tell the people that we love how much we love them. And to me, that again, that's such an immense gift.
How I love that. Your perspective is awesome. It's interesting. Um, after you went home and then you had time to process all this, how did you change your life? What did you do?
Well, I wish I could tell you that my life changed like instantly. Like I was a new person
It
after
doesn't work
I
like
left
that.
Mexico. It doesn't work that way.
Life
Uh,
doesn't
I
work like that. Change
it doesn't
doesn't
work
work like
that
that.
way, not at all.
No, yeah, which is good because you know what? That would be if you shared that, it would be kind of disappointing for our listeners and they'd be like, "Oh, well crap. I like Greg's awesome, but I'm not going to be able to do that." Yeah, share the messy middle. Let's hear about the messy
Oh
middle.
boy. Oh man. A lot. There's a lot there. Yeah, again, going back to that moment where I left the beach, you got so much adrenaline running through your system. It takes time to process all of that, and that was a multi-month, if not a multi-year journey for me
Mhm.
to like really come to the realization of what had happened. I think the fact that I had reached the end, or I was close to reaching the end, that was a message that I was able to process relatively quickly within months. I was really keenly, okay, yeah, I'm mortal. What I did with that though, that took years to figure that out. And that's a journey of self-discovery and really listening to I believe that there's like a pull, like if there is like a magnetism to the things that you want to do. It's hard to explain, but you feel that in the body, and it was hard to articulate at the time when I was going through it. I'm just like, I feel pulled, like I don't know why, but I feel pulled to build a business. I feel pulled to go again to Hawaii. I can't explain these things. I just know I need to do them. And I've learned that you got to follow that wisdom in the body. You got to follow that intuition in the body. And that's not to say that you don't balance those decisions with rationality. Absolutely do. But deep down, if you really were to sit and you really ask yourself the questions, what would fill me with joy? what would I absolutely love to do with my life? If this was the last year of my life to live, what would I want to accomplish? And just asking yourself questions and just sitting there having the courage to just be completely honest with yourself, and then creating a plan for how to do that. And it doesn't mean that like I got to have everything figured out right off the bat. It just means like, what's one step that I could take in that direction? It doesn't need to be a huge step. It could be one simple step, one step of commitment. If there is a new skill I want to learn, if there's a new hobby, like for example, for me right now, like I told you that like creative writing's always been something on my heart. I wasn't able to fully articulate that, but I'm just like, I want to explore screenwriting. So what's one simple step I could do? Like I could go on YouTube and I could start learning about screenwriting. Great. And how do I feel about that? That's resonating with me. I'm loving it. I'm feeling the pull. I'm feeling the magnetism. Okay, what's another step I could do that allows me to invest a little bit more? And then you just follow that intuition and you just invest a little bit more and you invest a little bit more. And that's one thing that I've learned in my time working with Fortune 500 companies and building training tools with them is teaching them the concept of experimentation. And you want to experiment in low risk, quick and easy ways that generate results. And how do you do that in your life? By following your guidance and your intuition. And that's basically what I did. Is of like, I want to learn more about business. Where can I do that in a quick, easy, low risk way? Great. If I'm still feeling the pull, if I'm still feeling strong about this, how do I invest a little bit more time? Maybe just a little bit of money, right? But I test the concept out first. And I just allow that intuition to pull me and guide me. And that's something that, again, that was a multi-year journey. Like I did not realize that leaving Mexico right away, but it's something that I've come to realize since then. And it's never steered me wrong. And I think that ultimately we do have to follow our own hearts to be truly fulfilled.
Yes, the fulfillment comes from following your heart. I can't wait to read your screenplay someday. I know it's coming. It's in you.
Yeah, it's in me. I mean, that's a multi-step process as well. And I'm learning right now from some very established screenwriters in LA. And I'm so immensely blessed to have made the connection to be able to learn from them. And the way I'm approaching it is I'm a sponge. I'm a student and I'm just eager to learn. I'm eager to grow. I'm not going to judge myself on that journey. I'm not going to judge myself on the result. I'm going to judge myself on the action. I'm not even sure if judge is even the right word to use, but I am going to take the action and I'm going to celebrate that I'm taking the action. And I'm going to recognize that. And the result, I'm not going to necessarily be concerned with that. I'm concerned about the growth. I'm concerned about the journey. I'm concerned about, how do I feel going through this journey? Does it still resonate with me? Do I have a story to tell? Like, how do I tell that in a way that's authentic to me? And that's, for me, where I derive a lot of the value of going on that journey is like, how do I grow as an individual? How does it help me to feel fulfilled? And how do I serve other people through that feeling? And that's a journey of self-discovery. We're constantly on that journey of self-discovery.
I love that you asked yourself some really powerful questions. What would I love? What would I love to do? What would make me feel fulfilled? What would bring me more joy? How can I serve other people? What does that look like, right? And I don't think people teach us, when we go to school, we don't learn that it's, not result. It's celebrate the middle, the little pieces.
Yeah, it's growth mindset, right? It's not judging myself on an end result. If I'm learning something new, especially if you're exploring something like I focus mainly on livelihood when I coach students, and that's my domain. But I mean, fulfillment can be in so many different areas of life. I just focus on one little area of it. But what I teach students is the idea that, when you're learning a new skill in pursuit of something that will fulfill you, don't judge yourself on your ability to produce results through that skill, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to look at yourself, go, I'm not good at this. Like so many people do this where they want to try something new, and you're not going to be great at that new thing right off the bat. None of us are. Like that's just human nature. But we judge ourselves so poorly for it, and we tell ourselves, oh, I'm not a natural artist. oh, I'm not a natural athlete. I have no aptitude at this skill. And recognizing that skill is simply repetition, intelligent repetition, and just seeking out feedback so that you don't repeat the same mistakes and you continue to grow. Like every human being who's achieved huge amounts of success at implementing any specific skill, that's what they did. It was through conscientious, intelligent repetition. But we are so hard on ourselves in the early stages of our journey, where we immediately compare ourselves to people who are a million steps ahead of us. And we think to ourselves, I'll never reach that. I'll never reach that level of skill. And we tell to ourselves, after our first few failures, and failure I put in quotes because it's really just feedback, but we tell ourselves, I don't have an aptitude. And I told myself this for a long time. I had no background in business. Like growing a business, I would make so many mistakes. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I just don't have a mind for this. But reminding yourself that it is a skill, and celebrating the actions that you're taking, and finding people who can guide you, who've already been there and done that, who can help to accelerate your results, and allow you to get results in a way where you're not going through as much pain. That to me are lessons that I've learned along the way that have helped me out immensely, and just lessons that I want to pay forward to other people in their own journey of going out there and doing the things that fulfill them. Because again, we don't want to live that life with regret.
It's interesting. You just said about find somebody who can help you shorten the curve, exponentially figure it out faster, whatever it is that you're learning and exploring and experimenting with. And I think that that's so important, because finding a coach, whatever, like for me, when I started paddleboarding, like that's a perfect example of something. Like in the beginning, oh my gosh, it was not fun. My number one goal, not fall into the freezing cold ocean, which way am I supposed to hold the paddle? Which way, what's going on? Just the whole thing was crazy, right? But it's amazing how over time, and then taking some classes, watching videos, anyway, and just keep showing up. It's one of my most fulfilling. It's my magical place on the water, like it's just, and I think that we give up so easily because we're so critical of ourselves that we miss out on a lot, we could.
Yeah, absolutely. And kudos to you for going paddleboarding, because I can remember a number of years ago, this was prior to me having my renaissance, if you will. I remember going paddleboarding down south. I was on vacation with a good friend, and we were in down south for his wedding. And I went paddleboarding, and I was terrible at it. Like I would fall off all the time. And I remember, like, this is painful. This I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not good at this. I remember telling myself these things. But this was prior to me adopting more of a mindset of, it takes repetition and acknowledging that process, and finding joy out of the growth. Like looking at yourself and going, and I know this sounds cliche, but so true, just comparing yourself to who you were the last time you did this, and realizing like, hey, you know what? I'm a split second longer on this paddleboard than I was the other day. I'm going to celebrate that. That's awesome. That's a win. And it's just showing up with that attitude. And that, again, that coaching that kind of helps you along the way, where you're not repeating the same mistakes. So for me, one of the things I realized in my journey was, again, just doing low risk experimentation with the things that I felt pulled to do. And when I was at a stage where I was ready to make an investment, where I'm like, this, I'm really feeling pulled to do right now. I'm feeling this in every single meter of my body, every inch of my body, I'm feeling this. I got to do this. What's the next step? Well, I'm going to find out who's already done this, and I'm going to learn directly from them, and I'm willing to work with them. But after doing that experimentation, right? So that's what helped me out a lot in reaching my goals. And I got so many goals. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg for me. I mean, I've got so much I still want to do, but I just found that that's really been a process of work for me.
I think that when people implement that, do some of the low risk investigating and experimenting, and then start moving in the direction of the things that really do fulfill you, and you find you want to dig more into it. I love that idea. I hadn't really thought about that before. Very smart.
Yeah.
Would you share with people what you do right now? Because I love following you, and we'll talk later at the end about where people can find you. But right
Mhm.
now, I love following your posts and tell people kind of what you do and who you do it with. And I know you do it for some people that are very, well known, and then you do it on your own also. And so tell us about your coaching journey.
Yeah, yeah. That was really inspired by my own journey, where I've always equated a deep sense of fulfillment to what I do for a living. I've known that about myself for a very long time, and I probably knew of that about myself even before that day on the beach, except I wasn't living it.
Mhm.
And so for me, that journey of seeking that livelihood that deeply fulfilled me was a message that I want to share with other individuals through my coaching. And what I recognize is that there's so many of us who have a passion or a calling or a mission or a purpose, and we don't quite know, like, how do I pursue that? I'm right now, I'm in 9 to 5. I was there. I was there myself, where you
Yeah.
got the full-time job and you're thinking to yourself, how do I do this? How do I pull this off in a way where, I'm not sacrificing what's most important to me in my life, which for many people, it could be their family, it could be their health and fitness, it could be their spirituality and a connection with a higher power, what have you. But how do I not sacrifice any of these things? But at the same time, I don't want to encounter any overwhelm or stress along the way. Like, how do I harmonize the inclusion of this new thing into my life?
Hmm.
And um, for me, that was a process that I made a lot of mistakes doing. And what I came to realize is that, a lot of us talk about like time management. We got to get better at using our time. And what I came to realize through my own journey of following mentors, reading books, trial and error, experimentation, is that it's really about self-management. It's really about getting clear on what are the things that are most important to me. What do I want my life to look like down the road? And then living in extreme alignment to that and having the courage and the conviction to be able to say no with grace to the things that don't serve that. And when we can do that and we combine that with a greater level of awareness of where we're investing our time and energy, we are able to better leverage the resources that we have. And the bottom line is we can introduce something new into our lives in a way that doesn't generate overwhelm, that doesn't generate any stress, that doesn't sacrifice what's already most important to us. And so that's what I really teach people is how do you do that? Like, how do you better self-manage so that way you can introduce this new aspect into your life? Because I think just having lived it myself, one of the worst feelings I could ever imagine in the world is looking back on your life and asking yourself the question, what if? Like, what if I had just, you know, found the time, so to speak? Like so many of us are
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't, and it's like, to me, it would be such a shame for people to reach the end of their lives and just think to themselves like, but if I had just figured this out, or if I had just gone for it, what could I have discovered about myself? What could I have discovered about how I could serve the world in a way that's deeply resonant with me, or pursue a passion that's been on my heart for a very long time? And so that's what I really help people to do. And what I've come to realize in my journey as well, and I've met some amazing people along the way, is that I'm helping right now people who are entrepreneurs who are looking to build knowledge-based businesses, and I'm helping them out through programs by Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, and that really resonates with me because that's a huge part of what I am. I'm like self-education. I'm right there. That's right up my alley, and people who have a passion on their heart to build a business. Well, I'd love to help them out with that, having been there myself and still growing myself. What can I impart on them? I'm a few steps ahead of them. What can I share with them that I've gleaned? What insights that I've gleaned along the way? And that to me is an immensely fulfilling journey that I've been on, is to be able to do that and to be able to have that resonate with my message is also vitally important to me. And that message obviously being like, regret is a gift. So if there's something on your heart, do it now. Don't wait. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And to me, that's part of my transformation. And I'm always growing, and I'm always learning some new stuff about myself along the way that I love to share on my Facebook page. And so a lot of the stuff that I share on my posts, some of it's very tactical, some of it's very much related to my business and what I do. But a lot of it is just based off of being on the journey and what new perspectives have I gleaned, and what new questions have popped up in my head or I've come across and caused me to reflect and prompted me to ask myself these questions and to really gain more clarity in my own life. And I'm finding tremendous value in those and just wanting to share that information. That's really what my page is about. It's just, here's some really crazy, awesome, great stuff I've come across. I just want to share it. I want to share it with all of you for the purpose that you live your own life in full fulfillment. Like, you just go after what you want and you live that life of impact and joy and passion and service.
I do. I love all your posts. And isn't it amazing that you're learning and sharing, right? And helping other people. What is the best advice? Well, here's two prongs. What's the best advice that you've ever received? And then the best advice that you've ever given to somebody?
Ooh, that's a great question. Mm-hmm. Gosh, best advice I've ever received. I've received so much incredible advice over the years. That's a difficult question to ask. But one thing that I think really resonated with me is the power of proximity. I think that that's really important. And what I mean by that is your proximity to basically the people around you. What kind of company do you keep? And I think that's so vitally important because, we are to a certain extent influenced by the people around us. And we want to surround ourselves with people who celebrate us, who understand us, who maybe have been on the journey themselves of seeking fulfillment in their own lives. And so they understand the trials and tribulations that come with that. And they're supporting you and they're rooting you. And maybe they challenge you and they pose questions to you that really prompt you to reflect. And they don't let you off the hook. And they want to hold you accountable to who you say you want to be and what you say you want to do. Having people like that in your life. And as difficult as it is, because I've encountered this in my own life, there's people who aren't necessarily going to be your cheerleaders. There's people who are not necessarily going to be there to support you along the way. And, you kind of have to distance yourself from those people. You still care about them. You still love them in the best way you can, but you recognize that this is my one shot at life. And it behooves me, therefore, to go after it with all my heart. And that means also surrounding myself with the people who are going to support me in that journey and who I can support in turn. And so for me, that's been a huge, huge lesson that's been imparted to me, is that proximity is really massively, massively powerful. In terms of the best advice I've given, it's probably not going to be nearly as powerful.
I don't know. I love your posts. I think they're pretty powerful. And the first thing I did when I got my book was go. Mm-hmm. I already knew my story, but I didn't know. I knew you were in the book, but I didn't know your story. First thing I did was turn to your page and read your story first. I wanted to know why Maya included you.
Yeah. And I feel so immensely blessed that she invited me to be a part of the book. And to have my story featured alongside stories like your own that are just so immensely transformative and inspiring. For me, that's I get an immense sense of fulfillment from that and pride, really. But in terms of in regards to my own advice that I could give out to someone that I would trust would serve them well, a lot of us are prompted along the journey of self-discovery and discovering what truly fulfills us to ask ourselves 3 questions. And you may have heard these 3 questions before. 1 is, what do I want? 2 is, why do I want it? 3 is, how do I get it? And you ask yourself those questions in that order. Because if you ask yourself the question of who to get started or how to get started, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be like, how do I do this? Like, it's just wild. There's so many steps. But when you ask yourself the question of what, and you get clear on that, you get yourself clear on the why. That's the emotional fuel you need to start taking action on the how. What I've come to realize in the journey, though, is there's a fourth question that you need to ask yourself. And this question has three different perspectives on it. And that's the question of who. You have to ask yourself the question of who. And the three perspectives of who are: one, who earns the privilege of achieving this vision, of achieving this goal, of achieving this dream? And the reason you ask yourself that question is, and that's a gut check question, it prompts us to reflect on, how am I showing up every single day? Am I showing up with integrity? Do I have the right habits? Am I showing up with a positive energy? How am I taking care of my body so that I can support myself to take care of myself on this journey? How am I treating the people around me? Am I showing up as the person that I need to be? Because, your destiny is basically a byproduct of your character. That's really what it is. That one of the things I've learned along this journey is destiny is a byproduct of character. And so the question of who earns the privilege of earning this, whatever it is, might be for you, that's a question of character. And so that's one of the questions that I've come to learn that I need to ask myself. And that's a question that I would encourage anyone that I work with, anyone that I encounter, to ask themselves that question as well. The second perspective of the who question is, who's on this journey with me? And that goes back to the idea of proximity. Like who maybe doesn't necessarily have the exact same identical goals as me, because we are all very much individuals. We have our own unique visions of what we want to achieve, but who's going after it? Who is taking that bold, uncomfortable, courageous action in fulfillment of their heart's ambition? I want those people with me because they understand me. They're my family, and I want to support them like they support me. And the third perspective is, who has already accomplished what I want to accomplish? So that's the third perspective, the who question. And I would encourage anyone who's stuck with the how to ask themselves that who question. Who's already achieved what I want to achieve? Because if you're asking yourself that question, chances are you're pretty serious about going after your heart's ambition. In which case, my suggestion would be, find someone who's already done it, because they'll show you the way. They'll show you the path. It goes back to what we talked about earlier with coaching. And it doesn't necessarily mean I need to make an investment in somebody. What it means is, where can I start to gather these resources? And I mean, we're so immensely blessed that we have the internet available to us. I mean, think about even just 30 years ago, you would have to go to a library or a live conference. You can do it from the comfort of your own home to start answering that question. Who has already accomplished this? And learn from them to accelerate your own results.
That is so powerful on the who, right? So many different angles.
Yeah.
I think proximity is so important. And I think people get lost in that because they don't understand that I guard my energy. I'm very protective of my energy and where I am, or what I even, who I'm with, what do I participate? What kind of media do I take into myself? What kind of books? All of that impacts our spirit and our energy.
Absolutely.
And I think we just have to be careful of all of those things that be the gatekeeper of our minds, and really be careful and just selective of it. Like you said, it's so funny. Until I met Maya, I'd never heard about be her now, be him now, right? Who is that person? What is that person like that has the ultimate life that you would like to have? Who are they? Who do you have to be to claim that, right? And so when I wrote that out for myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a few big gaps in between current Colleen and ideal Colleen, right? And it literally transformed every freaking aspect of my life when I wrote out, what does she taste? What does she smell like? How does she act? What does she dress like? What does she do every day? How does she spend her time? Who are her friends? Where does she vacation? Who does she consult with? Who does she meet with? And I just started writing it all down. It's like literally since I did that exercise, it's gotten so much easier to make the decisions that really need to be made to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a decision. Like when you wrote all that stuff down and you were like, I'm not this person yet, but I want to be this person, you know, that's a decision. I can become this person today. Like there's nothing holding me back from changing my behavior starting right now. And that's when you come to that realization, that's a humbling realization. But I think it's also an immensely empowering realization when we just own it. We're just like,
Mhm.
this is on me. This is my responsibility. And I don't need anyone else's permission. I don't need to wait on anybody else to become this person today. And one of the really powerful tools I've come across in my time, and I preach this from the rooftops to everybody,
Oh, good.
is, and this is not my tactic. This is actually something that Benjamin Franklin figured out centuries ago. But he would basically ask himself, like, who do I want to be? And he would write down a list of virtues. And he's like, how do I act on these virtues each and every day? And he would make a checklist. And that's what I've adopted into my own life is who is the person I want to be? What are some very simple actions that I can do every single day that live in alignment to myself, to this vision, and also in alignment to my goals moving forward? So that way I can make them super powerful. So for example, and this might seem like very simplistic, but it's like setting a set time to wake up and go to bed every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds so, people might listen to this podcast and go, well, that seems really, again, elementary or simplistic. But when you really think about it, you go, what does that actually mean? It means I have self-discipline. It means I have self-control. It means that I value my own health and my own level of energy and how I show up each and every day. It means that when I wake up in the morning, like I want to get started and I want to live my life and I want to start achieving some goals. I'm not sleeping in until, noon or whatever. I was that, and I was that person. I was that person, especially in my 20s. I would sleep in until in the early afternoon. And I'm not proud to admit that, but that was me. And
Yeah.
and when you just create this checklist for your life of like, how do I need to act every single day in alignment to what's most important to me and who I want to be? And if I can attach that, especially to the achievement of goals, like they support the achievement of my goals moving forward, that's a really powerful combination of transformative behavior. And that's a tool that I've used now for a number of years. And yeah, I would encourage anybody, like if you're trying to adopt more empowering habits, what are some very simple, like start small. What are 5 very simple actions that I can take each and every day that are in alignment to who I want to be and what I want to achieve?
I love that. That's one of my questions I ask people on the podcast is what habits do you think people should adopt or have you adopted that have helped get you to where you are?
Yeah. Well, one of them is already out of the bag. Cat's out of the
Yeah,
bag on that
waking
one.
up, it's good.
Yeah, that daily exercise for me is really important.
Mhm.
If I find if my body's not taken care of, I don't have the energy to show up every single day. And energy is life. Like so many people say, it's absolutely true. If I don't have the energy to do something, I'm not going to be able to do it. I found that having low levels of energy actually affected my emotions. It affected the amount of courage that I could show up with every single day. When I was tired, I wasn't courageous. And so I was like, okay, well, I know this is a huge factor for me. So I'm going to work out every single day to ensure that my body is healthy. And that doesn't mean I'm always lifting heavy weights every single day. It might mean I go out for a walk every single day for half an hour, or I might do some cardio, something a little bit more high tempo, but I move my body essentially every single day for at least 30 minutes. And that's another one of my habits that I've adopted. 30 minutes of reading every single day is another one of my habits, minimum. So what I found now is I tend to absorb a lot of books through like audio. I love audiobooks. I find that like I'm better able to leverage my time reading an audiobook. But I mean, there's also something to be said for having a physical book in your hands and just sitting back and listening to some chilled music and reading that book, whatever suits you best, right? But I always do reading. I set aside 30 minutes every single day to learn a new skill. So what is one new skill that will help me to achieve my vision for the future of what is the calling on my heart? And I set aside time every single day to practice that skill, half an hour. And those are just some habits that I've come to adopt that have really helped to serve me in not only just achieving my goals, but also showing up as the person I want to be. And I think that moving forward for all of us, like you said, like habits are part of your character. Habits are your destiny. But the insidious thing about habits is that they are subconscious. We're not even aware that they're there. And so one of the things I often suggest to people, if you want to become aware of your habits, is to actually journal your time throughout the day in blocks. And just like, it sounds crazy, but this has been a life-changing practice for me. And I still do this on a consistent basis every 6 months as I do a time journal. And like, what have I done over a span of 3 to 5 days? I journal my time every 20 minutes. Timer goes off, write down, what did I do for the last 20 minutes? And what you'll find is like, there's habits that work their way into your life that you're not even aware of. And what's really eye-opening is when you start to see these habits popping up at the same time every single day, or following the same type of activity, or between the same 2 activities, and you're like, bingo, that's a habit. Okay, I gotta change that. And I found for me that's been a really big practice, because habits always will work their way back into, well, not just my life, everyone's life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm gonna do that. I've never done that.
Yeah, it is eye-opening. Eye-opening.
I bet I waste a lot more time than I think I do, on things.
Yeah, you can buy back a lot of time to do the things that you love to do just by doing that. And because what you realize is, wait a second, that 10 minutes I spent on Instagram just mindlessly scrolling without any intention, like we don't realize like that 10 minutes after a span of a week is 17 minutes. After a span of like a year, you're looking at well over 50 hours, if not 60 hours. That's been going where? Like think about like that's to me, when I think about regret, that's part of the reason why I do that exercise, is I think to myself, how could I have been better invested those 60 hours of my life? And I don't really know the exact math of that, like 70 hours a week, but it's around that time, around 60 hours, I'd say. It's at least 52.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, when you think about it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I do these activities and using these tools, is because it goes back to that curriculum, that life curriculum, that message I live, which is, regret is a gift. When I think about the 60 hours and I regret what I could have done with those 60 hours, it makes me more present-minded to today, of like, okay, I'm going to be a lot more mindful moving forward about how I invest my time.
I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to do that. I cut out, to do all this stuff, I cut out Netflix, and TV, just TV in general.
Yep.
And it is amazing how when I don't miss it. It's the craziest thing, like, I mean, I think at Christmas we'll watch a movie or something, during Christmas time or something, but it is, we all have the same 24 hours. It's just what do we fill it with,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to track that. I never thought about tracking it before. I'm going to track that. I'm going to challenge everyone listening. If you feel inspired to do that, I am going to do it if you want to join. And it's interesting to see how we do spend our time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would encourage everyone to just do it between 3 to 5 days, depending on the variability of your schedule. If you have a lot of variability, meaning that you don't really follow a set routine every single day, then you might want to do it for 5 days. Mm-hmm. It will help. It'll give you more data points, and then you'll have better able to pick up patterns from that. And if you have more routine, then only do it for 3. But it's just about bringing awareness. Bottom line is, you're doing that just to bring awareness to where your energy, your time, your focus is going. So that way, you and I both know, like, and I'm sure quite a few listeners know this, like, you first need to gain awareness before you can do anything to change.
Yes.
And so this is a great tool to do that. Just wake up in the morning, set a timer for 20 minutes, and throughout the day, just journal. Anytime the timer goes off, I'd encourage, like, just vibration, no actual music, because you might really annoy the people around you. But you just set it to chime off 20 minutes. And it only takes you a few seconds to write into a book or a journal, what did I do for the last 20 minutes? And then you just go back after 3 to 5 days and you start to really, it becomes again an eye-opening experience of where your time is going.
Oh yeah, I cannot wait to implement this, because I think that for me, I can only speak for me. I waste more time than I like to admit, and so it's good, so you can become more aware and start maybe making some adjustments on where things go. I have another question for you. You said you read 30 minutes every day. What books, or maybe what book or books have impacted you the most? And we all have our favorites that, like I have a few books that I read one book 8 times just to be able to implement it, because I was hard-headed, let's just be honest. But I had a hard time believing that book was right, and it was. But for me, I'm a big reader. I'm a big reader. I love reading, and it really expands my mind. I have a lot of blind spots that I like to, I just love to learn and just get different perspectives on things. What book or books have impacted you the most? And what should we read?
Yeah, what should you read? There have been so many. I think one of the big books for me, and I tend to read more nonfiction than fiction, although I do want to start reading a little bit more fiction, because I think there's value in just allowing your mind to
Have fun.
go to a new, have some fun, right? Inject some fun.
I have that
explore
same
something new.
I didn't used to read books for fun, and then I've started. My friend, that's all she reads is fun books.
Yeah.
And I one of my goals is to have more fun, and I can't believe how incredible some of these fun books are.
Yeah. And yeah, like it's just a different form of entertainment rather than being so passive and taking things in through a screen. It's being more active, and you're imagining being in a new world surrounded by new characters. And I think there's nothing like it. And I think it's just a different type of exercise for the brain. It just keeps the brain young, if you will. I tend to read more screenplays, if anything, at all, based on what I'm doing right now on the side. And that's kind of my fictional reading. But to go back to your question, and to be really vulnerable, the book that, or at least one of the books that has influenced my life more than any other book, is a book called Wild at Heart by John Eldridge.
By who?
And John Eldridge, I believe that's his name. I'll have to double check that. Eldridge is his last name, but it's called Wild at Heart, and it's about the male journey. And it is really a book of healing, that because the male journey is very closely tied to, a legacy that's passed down from father to son. And my dad and I have not always had closest of relationships. He was a good father, but we were never terribly close. And over time, you can grow distant to people in your life. And when I recognized this, and there was a lot of bitterness and anger that I had in my heart for a long, long time, feeling that I wasn't able to connect with him, feeling even abandoned, and trying to discover what my role was as a man moving forward. And I think that, some of your male listeners might really resonate with this, is that there's a unique male journey. And for me, that was a book of healing, where you're walking through and you realize that, like, we're born to be wild as men. We're born to go out there. We're born to explore. We're born to have adventures. We are born to go out and be essentially initiated as men, and to find a brotherhood of men is so vitally important. And for me, that was a really, really powerful book, and that changed my life. I mean, on a more general note, there's been a number of other books that I would highly recommend. Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Grit, Grit.
Grit. Yep. Is another one that I would highly recommend. She opened my eyes to, like, essentially, if you want to succeed, of the power of grit. And so many of us think to ourselves, like, it's based off of intelligence. It's based off of your level of skill. And that's not really the case. It's based off the level of resilience and persistence and your willingness to, like, we're all going to face obstacles. We're all going to face struggles. How many times can we pick ourselves up and keep moving forward? And she teaches people essentially, how do you develop greater levels of grit in your life so you can achieve what you truly want? And that was a really eye-opening book for me. There's so many. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink is Extreme Ownership is another one I'd highly recommend. It's more about, he relates it to business, but that's a philosophy that can be applied to life. When you accept ownership over your life, you accept extreme responsibility, and that is not a burden. That's the most empowering feeling in the world. And I would highly recommend that book. Yeah, there's so many that I mean, what's another one that I can think of right off the bat? Steve Jobs, his autobiography. I find autobiographies are a fantastic resource to read, especially right before you go to bed, because you can learn so much from reading other people's stories. And you can see aspects of yourself in their story. You can see how they handled challenges, and it can inspire you on how you'd like to handle challenges moving forward. But there's also something about being wrapped up in the story where it's like, I'm not necessarily being taught a framework like A, B, C, step 1, 2, 3. So it allows your mind to relax a little bit, I find, as well. So you're still learning, but it's not in such in a kind of focused, kind of like a focused perspective, if you will. And so that's another book that I found has been great. There's a number, but those are the ones I think that really, right off the top of my head, have really struck me.
I appreciate you sharing them. I can't wait to read them. I'm going to read them.
Yeah.
I love learning. I do think I think it's so important. And I think healing your relationship with your father, whether they're alive or dead, and even if you don't ever talk to them, but for yourself, in your own consciousness, inside of you, it's very freeing to, especially because I'm a parent, and there was no guide, there was no instruction manual with any of my kids. And unfortunately, and when I started on this self-awareness journey, the first thing I wished when I attended one of my first seminars was, holy crap, I wish I would have known this, but I was raising my kids because I was older. Like, wow, that would have been a good thing. But the good thing is that I'm implementing the stuff I know with my granddaughter, and I see my daughter with my granddaughter. She has her say affirmations every night that are just mind blowing. She sent me a video of her the other night, and I'm just like, oh, because at first I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this sooner. But we can only do what we know at the time, and then we move forward with the new information.
Exactly.
And then just do the best we can, and apologize for not knowing any better in the beginning, and just keep moving forward, because I did the best I could, and that's all I could do. And it's
I
a
couldn't agree
lot.
more. I couldn't agree more. The healing, it comes from forgiveness. When you recognize, like, people do the best they can with what they know. And that doesn't just apply for other people, that applies for ourselves. And truth be told, like, when I left Mexico after that near-death experience, I had a lot of anger directed towards myself, kicking myself for, like, why didn't I do this? Why did I allow my own my self-doubt, my fear, hold me back from living a life that's truly fulfilling? And what I ultimately had to realize is that I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. And I can't fault myself for that. You cannot judge yourself, your past mistakes, on present day wisdom. And that was something that I had to learn. And through that learning, I could forgive myself and be able to continue to move forward. And so that applies not just obviously to our relationships, that applies to ourselves too. Yeah.
I think it's so important to forgive yourself, and to give yourself grace, and to say, congratulations, high five, you did a great job. You did the best you could. we were on a cruise in Alaska. I was in the pool or jacuzzi with this lady in the spa, and I was explaining some stuff about, it was right after Carter had cancer, and then our other son has struggles with addiction at the same time. So I had both things going at the same time, which was just mind blowing. And I was talking to her, and she said, I hope that when you go back into the spa and to change to go back to your room, that you're going to look yourself in the mirror and you're going to say, Colleen, I love you. And you've been through hell. And I hope you say you did the best you could. And I forgive you for anything that you feel like you could have handled better. But I give you grace and I love you and great job. You survived and you're here today. And I was like, I'd never thought about that before. And I went and did that. And I just felt so much better afterwards when I just gave myself some grace because I was so hard on
Yes.
myself.
Yes, that is so important, is to have that level of grace. And
Mhm.
um, that's, I think, if you can get to that point, that's a big part where the peace comes from. Like, I think the peace is going after what would truly fulfill you in life, but doing so in such a way where you experience grace along the
Mhm.
way. Like, it's so important that, and that has to be practiced. That has to be conscientiously practiced. At least that's what I believe.
I
And
do
that
too.
is, as you're going through, because you're going to make mistakes. We're human beings. We're none of us are perfect. We're going to make mistakes along this journey of whatever it is we want to accomplish with our lives, and not to fault ourselves for that. And, like, to your point, congratulate yourself for
Yeah.
doing it. You know, we focus so much oftentimes on the gap in front of us of
Mhm.
where we are right now and where we want to be. One of the things I've learned along the way is to look at the gap behind us and say, well, look at where I started and look where I am today. And look at all, like, yes, there were mistakes along the way, but there's action that go along with that, brave, bold action that I took. And when we look at it in that way, we can be grateful for the journey. We can be grateful for the growth that we've achieved. We can be grateful for all the people we've met who have supported us along the way and who have enriched our lives. And we can be also grateful that, there's a privilege that comes along with that journey. Like, that we have the choice of doing that. There's so many people in this world who life circumstances don't permit them to go after what they want because they have more immediate concerns of survival.
Mhm.
So many of us, in the United States, and I'm in Canada, or, there's other parts of the world where we have the gift of choice. We have the gift of pursuing the same thing we love. That's a privilege to be able to take on that action, right? That's a decision that we have the opportunity to make. And I think that there's gratitude that comes along with that. And so that's what comes from looking at the gap behind us. And so keeping that grace in mind, keeping that gratitude in mind as we move forward, as we continue to close that gap. Yeah, I agree completely with you. It's so important.
Yeah. Appreciating how far we've come.
Yeah.
It's funny that you said that today. I taught a class in my office. I haven't taught a class in the office in a long time, obviously, because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. m- Uh, Judy she's the broker who hired me when I first started selling real estate. I don't know how long ago it's been, maybe 15, 20 years. I don't know how long I've been doing this now. And about 20 years, right? Yeah. And it's so funny because, I think it's like a 90% or 95% failure rate in real estate, people who get their license versus people who become successful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's pretty high. It's pretty high failure rate. And I remember meeting her the first time I met her. I had just gotten my license and I was interviewing offices to see, where I wanted to put my license. And after the class today, we were talking, and I just went to go give her a hug and tell her how much I love her because we're at a different office, both of us now. And she goes, "Can you believe how many so long ago? I remember when you were first started." She goes, "But you would show up to everything. I'd show up to every training, everything. I just soaked anything I could in. And I just I just think to she said, look at how far you've come. She goes, look at who you've become. And it was just, I'm so glad we talked about that because I had forgotten because I do think I'm so focused on the forward, all the
Yeah.
stuff I'm creating, this new, um, divine purpose, I would call it, right? And
Mhm.
I think it's so important. It was when she said that, it was the last thing before I got in the car, and then I drove here, and then I'm interviewing you. And I
Mhm.
just thought I was so glad that she reminded me of that moment of that 20 years ago, Colleen.
Mhm.
And man, I didn't know Jack Smack. I just, it was a lot and it was very overwhelming. And 17 years ago, John just looked it up. Yeah, 2004, I got my real estate license. And, I'd never sold anything in my life. I didn't think I could sell anything, and I just knew I didn't want to. I was a teacher before and I knew I didn't want to teach anymore.
Mhm.
Well, that's another story for another day. We won't go into that, but there's a reason I quit teaching. And it's interesting. I thought I was just going to teach for my whole life, I didn't expect to do anything. And I think that we have to celebrate ourselves and how far we've come because we forget.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. And even just the small acts, and I'm guilty of this myself, where you can be so focused. I'm very much like you, Colleen, where I'm just so focused on the future and where
Mm.
I'm going that sometimes I can forget. And I have to stop myself and be like, Greg, like, you know, you look at, yeah, you've taken so much action and you've achieved this result. And yes, you still have a long way you still want to go, but like celebrate the fact that you're here today and you've climbed up maybe 1/10 the mountain, but you're 1/10 closer than you were before. you
Mhm.
know you could have easily just said, screw it, I'm just going to sit back, veg out, eat potato chips and watch Netflix. And I would have looked back at my life and be like, well, I'm back at the bottom of the mountain, I haven't climbed that 1/10 of the way, right? And
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of you're absolutely right, like it's a conscientious practice. Sometimes we have to be reminded by others
Yeah.
to really celebrate ourselves and the actions that we take. And it just reinforces in our minds, like, to take more action. Like it's
Mhm.
like that reward that you feel. It's like, yes, I'm being rewarded for the action that I'm taking. And it goes back to that growth mindset and just adopting that moving forward rather than, hammering yourself about not achieving a result yet, congratulating yourself for how much closer you are to where you want to be compared to where you were when you got started, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Yeah, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, we have to celebrate ourselves and our little wins because they are wins. They're very important. I have another question for you.
Sure.
What's something I should ask you that I haven't asked you?
Oh, you should ask me. Gosh, I'm not even, I'm to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure. I'm drawing a blank right now. Um, yeah, I guess it's really because I'm so focused on talking about livelihood,
Hmm.
um, because just kind of where I'm focused as a coach. I think one of the things that is so important to keep in mind moving forward, and maybe a question to ask would be like, well, how does that fit in with everything else in my life? And I think it's so important that, for people like myself, and I'm sure there's listeners out there listening to podcasts right now who can identify with this, like people who derive a great sense of self-identity through and fulfillment through serving others and putting out value into the world and having impact. Reminding yourself that that comes in, has to be in balance with other things in your life. I think what's really important moving forward is to have a harmonized vision for your life, like just really clear. Like we have a lot of things that we value in our life, but ultimately, when you really break it down, there's really only a handful of things that are immensely important to us. And typically, the big ones are family, health, creating some form of new experiences, having more life experiences, or living life more fully and through experiences by creating experiences, through your livelihood, business, what have you, spiritual connection through God or a higher power, Mother Nature, the universe, what have you. Um, those are some of the ones I encounter the most often. But I mean, everyone has different sets of values. But as you pursue that thing, that's that calling that's on your heart that you really want to achieve, it's keeping in mind, like, what are these other things in my life that are vitally important to me? And making sure that, because I've been guilty of this in the past, where you can be so singularly focused that other parts of your life start to fall out of balance. And, you know, there have been times when I'm not proud to admit that I wasn't the best family member. I wasn't the best friend, you know, because there was a time in my life where, you know, especially right after what happened in Mexico, where I felt like, okay, I gotta pull my socks up and I gotta get to work. You know, it's great to have that gusto, but it has to be in harmony with these other aspects of your life that are vitally important. And so I would say that, like, having a very clear vision of where how you see your passion, your calling, your side business, your side hustle, whatever you have in your life, livelihood wise, that you really want to pursue, that be fit in harmoniously with all these other aspects. What does that your life look like, 3 years from now? What does that look like 3 years from now? What does that look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So that way nothing really falls out of balance. And that's something that I've had to learn along the journey. So I don't know if that's necessarily a question, but it is something that I wanted to raise because I've fallen down that rabbit hole myself, where I focus on certain parts of my life at the expense of others, at the expense of my health, at the expense of a spiritual connection. For the longest time, I wasn't a spiritual person at all, and I'm not claiming I'm a guru by any sense of the imagination. But what I've come to realize is that the power of having, or at least for me, having a spiritual connection to something that's greater than myself has really grounded me and has given me a lot of perspective in terms of, for example, when stuff happens in your life that prompts you to reflect and go, why is this happening to me? I can't believe this has happened to me. Why am I the recipient of this? I didn't do anything bad. I'm a good person. I think we've all been there. And just having that connection that, like, there's a higher power looking out for you, and recognizing, like, they're out, they have your back. Like, you were meant to experience this. And there was something there's some message or lesson or growth that you were meant to experience from this moment that will allow you to become a more fulfilled, realized version of yourself. So by the end of your time here on this planet, and you sit down with your maker and they ask you, are you happy with who you became and what you achieved? You could say yes. Like, it's those moments that of obstacles and friction, that those hard times, I found that having that connection to something greater really served me. And I did not have that for a very, very long time in my life. So to go back to kind of circle back to my original point, is just having all this stuff in balance, I think, is really, really important. Never letting anything really slide, just getting really clear on what's most important to you and living in highly aligned life in that way, saying no to anything that's not really aligned to that.
It reminds me, I'm so glad you brought that up. One of my coaches, he talks about a stool, and there's 7 equities in your life. And that if your stool is lopsided, it's going to fall over. If you're missing the spiritual side, the physical side, the connection, your family, the finances, the fun, the social, the finances. If you got a 2-legged stool, it's going to be problematic.
Oh yeah. And for a while, I was on a monopod trying to balance on this thing. I didn't have any of the other legs on the stool. And that's such a great analogy. I can't think of a better analogy than what you just shared. Like, it's like a stool, and if you're missing some legs, that stool starts to get wobbly, and ultimately it's not sustainable either. I mean, when you start to live unbalanced, it starts to cost you in one way or another. And if it's your health, I mean, I think the results are pretty obvious. If it's your family, you don't have that sense of connection and love that we all need to have. If it's your calling, what you've been, your livelihood, whatever you want to call it, your vocation, there's going to be that emptiness that, like, I felt. where I'm like, I'm meant to do something more with this life and I'm not doing it. Why? Like getting clear on what I want and why I want it. And I also talked about the spiritual side of it in my life, like just not having that connection, not realizing how much I missed it because I wasn't even aware that it was missing until I found it. And I think that's really important to have. It's like to your point, identifying what are those pillars that I need? What are those legs that are keeping my life stool up, if you will, making sure that stool stays balanced and steady.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think spiritual component is so important, and then I think that whatever it is for people, source or light or God or Tao or whatever it is for that person, for me, it's God. Um, I was talking with God when Carter had cancer, the first night that we knew it was more severe than we thought in the beginning because they pulled up all these screens and every screen had more tumors all over, and it wasn't like, oh, one or two tumors, like we're talking like covered, and more parts of his body. And I came home that night and I was crying and talking to God like my son was on a mission for for the church. Like, but he came back with all this cancer everywhere. This just doesn't make sense. And it's so funny that we think that things. I'm now over this belief or thought pattern that things don't make sense. That and life happens for us, not to us. I heard you say that, and I totally believe that because the person I am today, because of all of those experiences, or I call them now opportunities to grow, uh, the person I've become, and that, like when they refine gold and they purify it and have you ever, I don't know if you ever watched a video of someone refining gold and they turn up the heat and it sloughs off all the impurities.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like these extreme experiences give us an opportunity if we choose to rise up to a level that wouldn't be possible without the extreme experience. That's kind
Yeah.
of my opinion of it now, looking back.
Mm-hmm. It's very similar analogy to a diamond. That diamond's formed under pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when it becomes a gemstone. Otherwise, it's just carbon. And to me, I think of that and I go, that's really what makes people shine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the challenges they had to go through and what they overcame, and then having the courage to share that with others so that they don't have to go through those same challenges. And that's when you become a beacon. Like, that's when other people look to you as being that guiding light. And finding those people in your life is such a blessing. Becoming one of those people in your life is equally a blessing. But that has to, for lack of a better term, that has to be earned. You have to go out there and you have to, take your licks. And I know that that's a challenge. I know that can be scary. I know that that's frightening. I've been there myself. I still experience fear. I'm not Superman or anything like
You're
that.
not immune.
We all experience a fear, but
Yeah.
I think what gives us the courage to become that person is to, and again, circling back to the message of my story, is like the regret of not doing it, and the knowledge that we only have a set amount of time on this planet, and what a blessing and a gift that we've all been given to live this life. I read a statistic a while back, and I'm going to be paraphrasing it a fair bit here, but essentially 100,000 people, just over 100,000 people every single day on this planet do not open their eyes. And when I read the statistic, I was like, you are one of the people who did get to open their eyes today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thought that kind of ran through my head as I'm reading this. And I'm like, again, what a gift. I've been given another day. 100,000 people on this planet weren't, but I was. And that's just another way I frame it, like moving forward. Like, why do I take courageous action? Because I have the gift of life. My heart's beating. I'm breathing in air. I have potential. And as long as my heart's beating and I'm breathing, I got potential, and I can keep growing and I can keep achieving, and I can go after my dreams. But there is going to be one day where that's not going to be. the case. And so, again, it just gives me that healthy bit of urgency that I need to always be going after what I want, even if I am scared, because I know that I don't want to live that life looking back and going, geez, what if, or only if. So
Yeah,
that's what keeps me moving forward.
I love that. I think that's a good way to end. How do people find you, Greg? Where can people find you?
Sure. The best place to find me is actually on Facebook. That's where I'm most prevalent, where I'm most active. You can find me just at facebook.com/Gregory.Mang. And from there, you can follow the links to find my business page. I also have a Facebook community where I teach the things that I've learned throughout this wild journey that I've been on. And I love to connect with new people. So feel free to connect with me there.
What's your Facebook page called? I didn't know about this. Like your
Oh
group,
yeah, it's called Driv. Yeah, it's Driven to Impact,
Driven
or
to Impact.
yeah, Driven to Impact. Yeah, and it's the community with people who are there and they're all on that journey of, I'm here to grow. I have a calling on my heart, and it's, for me, I founded it because I didn't want to go on that journey alone. I've been on that journey alone. I found people along that journey, and I know what it feels like to be alone. And I was like, you know what? I've connected with some people online. Let me start inviting some people who are on this journey with me, and let's go on this journey together. And more people start joining us. And we're still a relatively small community, but it feels good to be able to impart what I know to others. So that way, like they can close the gap between where they are right now and where they want to be a lot quicker. And they don't have to go through the stuff that I went through, where you have those challenges regarding mindset, you have those challenges regarding the question of who and how, and you're not clear on what's most important, and you can't quite fit in. How do I fit this extra thing in my life when I'm feeling so overwhelmed already? Like, I just wanted to teach people what I knew, and that's really the genesis, the starting point of that group. So yeah, it's been a remarkable journey so far, and the journey continues, and I'm looking forward to it, and always growing, always learning more about myself, and and just basically taking this blessing of life and just running with it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I met you. God is good. I met Greg because I was cooking in the kitchen and felt like I should go hop on Facebook, and he was in a Facebook room and no one else showed up. I got really lucky and got to meet him. Do you know what the most powerful thing you said to me was in that room? What I took
Well,
away?
no, please do share.
So I was beating myself up for not. My friend started a podcast at the same time I did, and he's very successful at it. It's huge. It's huge, right? And but I had a kid. I had a severe family situation, and I could not sustain it. I only did 4 episodes when Carter had cancer. I started a podcast when Carter had cancer,
Mhm.
and it was too much. And so I took a break. And then after everything happened, I even took a break to decompress and heal and regroup. I needed to get recentered. I've been through a lot of trauma, and I just needed to build up my strength and get recentered. And you told me, because I've been kind of like a lot of regret with not just moving forward with it, because it's
Mhm.
consistency over time is what makes the difference, right? And
Absolutely.
and you told me, Colleen, there's a difference between wounded and healed people. And wounded people so many wounded people try to help sick people, but they can't help them because they're still sick. But healed people can help sick people. And you took the time to get healed. And so now is the time for you to move forward and help the people who are still sick. And that was such a light bulb moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I healed. I took the time to heal so I can go back and help those people. Because if I had just kept going, my energy, it was just too much. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
needed the time.
absolutely. Yeah, on a related note, like self-care is
Mhm.
so important, and knowing yourself well enough to be like, what, having knowing yourself well enough and having the grace to be able to take a step back and say, what, I've earned this rest. I've been through this, and like I'm still navigating this, and maybe I can't necessarily take the next step towards my vision, but I recognize the situation I'm in right now. I'm going to honor that, and I'm going to do what it takes to heal myself first, before I move forward. Because ultimately, if my goal is to pour into the cups of others, I got to make sure my own cup is filled first. And that's a pretty well-known analogy. And yet at the same time, it's such an apt analogy for so many of us who are going out there with a desire to impart our own journey, our own wisdom, our own knowledge, our own experiences, insights on others. So that way they can achieve what they want and not go through what we've been through. And so, I just want to honor you, Colleen, because like your journey is absolutely remarkable. I remember being in that room with you and you sharing your journey from the heart. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this person has such a huge heart to serve. They have like such a huge heart to give. And I remember thinking to myself as well, I can only imagine what she's experienced in her life. And she has so much, she's gleaned so many insights from that journey. Like when she's in that place to be able to, where she's healed and she's speaking from a place of not a wound, but a scar.
That's what the word was. Wounded and scarred.
A scar. Like that's when, we have a responsibility, I think, so many of us, when we share a message, that we share it from that place of a scar. Not to say that we're not always growing and learning and that we're not still on the journey, but that we've been able to emotionally navigate that message. And so, when we communicate that message, we can communicate it from a place of where people aren't necessarily fully emotionally drawn into like the anguish that we were experiencing. They can still emotionally feel it, but they know that we've been able to grow from it, and we've been able to be able to impart the wisdom from it. I think that's really important. We all have a responsibility there. So I'm just so proud of all that you've been able to achieve. And again, your message is just so powerful. And every time I hear your story, again, I'm just thinking to myself, I can only imagine. And I'm in awe of what you've been able to accomplish, what you've been able to overcome, and where you're going, and with the podcast and with your other work.
Thanks. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And thank you it was so amazing that God sent me to talk to you that day, because I had been really like, he'd just gotten a bunch of big awards, from YouTube and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that could have been me. Like we started at the same time, and comparison is just an awful thing. We should never compare ourselves to anyone. And we all know that, but then we do, right? And then I got in that room with you. And when you said that was the word you used, scars, right? You're scarred.
Yeah.
You're not wounded anymore. You have scars, and scarred people can help people. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was just so freeing to experience that with you. And I just thought to myself, the other thing it really helped me remember, which I know this to be true, but God always puts the right people in your life at the right moment to help you along your way, wherever you are, even when you didn't know it. Like literally I was cooking in the kitchen, and and then it was so impactful to me, right? Your message that you shared. And you didn't even remember what you said, probably. And I mean, you do now, but do you know what I'm saying? Like it impacted me on a huge level, right? So freeing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a gift, right? And it's because we both showed up to that place, right? And you're on your journey, and you met Maya somehow. And I'm not sure how you met her, but you met Maya. And then she asked you somehow to be part of that group, right? And to help provide value to the people who signed up for this that course that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing that I don't know why, but nobody else showed up. And it was just a personal coaching session for Colleen. And it was just what I needed to hear. And yeah,
It was meant to be.
Yeah,
It was meant to be.
And
And you and I spoke a little bit about it just prior to the podcast. And just something that I believe is that there are serendipitous coincidences that happen in the universe. And when you set an intention and then you take action towards that intention, it's amazing how you put the universe on notice, and how events and people enter your life and you cannot explain it, but it happens. And it's funny when you read, again, going back to like the idea of reading biographies, this is a recurring theme among so many people. It doesn't matter just if it's just in business or in athletics or in entertainment or in spirituality. Like a lot of people talk about this idea of this coincidence, this serendipitous coincidence. When you take action, you set an intention, the universe recognizes that and brings in the events and the people in your life that will support you on
At the
that. And
right
that's
time.
something that I've experienced in my own life. I mean, you're a great example of that.
Mhm.
And for you to share that with me and how I've been able to have some form of impact in your life is such an immense gift. What you just shared with me makes me feel so good, and I really deeply appreciate that. And it's been an absolute blessing to have got to know people like you. You're like, we talk about proximity, being surrounded by those people who, just they fill you up. I don't know how else to describe. They just fill you up. You hold those people close, and again, yeah, they're just such an immense blessing. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. You changed my life. It was huge. It's like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that before. Right. Oh, John's got something going on here. And it's, what is it? We're flying out in the morning to go see our granddaughter. The book launch. We had the book launch in the middle. Anyway, what I want to say is, because we'll wrap it up, but I wanted to say thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I I I know you say it's serendipitous. I have a saying, my big saying. This is before my message now is, this isn't your practice life. Do what you love now. But before that, for years, my saying is, miracles are my normal and everything's always working out for me. I say that every morning when I wake up and every morning before I go to bed. And then when Carter had cancer, God asked me, do you really believe that? Do you really believe miracles are your normal? And do you really believe everything's always working out for you? And I had to do a lot of soul searching. I said, yeah, I do. I believe that. And then we did get a miracle. And I don't know why some people, everyone, not everyone lives, their kids don't all live. And my heart goes out to them. And for some reason, my son was saved. And I'm not, I don't know why, what one versus the other, but I do know that as long as I'm alive, just like you said, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep doing this and spreading love and light and spreading hope to people and belief in them. Because I tell now people, every day when I see people, I tell them, I see greatness in you. I do. I see so much greatness. We all have greatness in us, and you have greatness in you. And I'm just so excited and I'm going to come to your screenplay. It's going to be, I believe that it's coming, and all your other goals and dreams in your business and helping people. And I know, like, you're aligned with Tony and Dean, and they're just the most amazing people. And what a wonderful community. Did you know I didn't know how to turn on the computer before I joined? I don't know if you know that, but
I had no idea. No.
yeah, up until now,
Yeah.
tech, my tech abilities were, I didn't know how to turn on the computer. So that'll kind of give you a glimpse of the situation. And then when I signed up for, because John and Sarah do all my tech for me and all the paperwork and everything. So as tech has changed and evolved, I haven't evolved with it. So I don't even know how it works. Previously, up until now I am. And I can remember when Maya had to teach me, I didn't understand Zoom at all. That was really a whole nother ball game. And they had to teach me how to raise my hand in the chat and everything. And I couldn't understand how to unmute myself. Anyway, they had so much patience with me and so much kindness. And it's such a safe space that, because it's my biggest fear, and I'm overcoming it, was the technology thing, and that John would die before me. And I would be devastated because I love him and that he was gone. But then the worst part would be, besides missing him, is that I don't even know how to turn the computer on. And so everything's on the computer. And how would I function, right? I'm going to be devastated and I can't turn on the computer. Anyway, so I just think it's interesting that now I do these Zooms and I do these podcasts. So I really believe that whatever people's goals and dreams are, anything is possible because I do this now.
Yeah. Well, hey, celebrate the growth, right? Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to turn off my computer. Now I'm running a podcast. I'm
Yeah.
going on Zoom. I
Yeah.
could jump into a Facebook room. Like, there's so much that's happened. So
Yeah. It's just crazy. So
celebrate the growth.
thank you, my friend. And thank you for having the courage because the name of the podcast is Born to Be Brave. And you guys, I hope you just love this interview. I've loved it. I've learned so much during this interview with Greg. And so thank you for joining us. You can find Greg on Facebook at gregory.mang, right? //
Yep.
gregory.mang.
Yep.
Then what's your group called again?
Yes. Driven to Impact.
Driven to Impact, and then Driven to Impact. Hold on, I'm going to get one more thing. And then if you want to read his story, you guys, his story is amazing. It's page 125 in One Love Speaks. It's phenomenal. Anyway, so I would recommend getting this book and reading all the stories. They spread love and hope, and will help you heal. And just, I don't know, just really warms my heart when I read the story. So anyway, so you can read his story in here and all the other authors' stories. Anyway, thanks for joining us, you guys.